the second half of Chapter 7, What Happened at the Front Door. During his long watching and waiting, one small thing happened, which I shall have to mention because something important came of it later on. A lady called with some grapes for Diggory's mother, and as the dining room door was open, Diggory couldn't help overhearing Aunt Letty and the lady as they talked in the hall. "What lovely grapes!" came Aunt Letty's voice. "I'm sure if anything could do her good, these would. But poor dear little Mabel, I'm afraid it would need fruit from the land of youth to help her now. Nothing in this world will do much." Then they both lowered their voices and said a lot more that he could not hear. If he had heard that bit about the land of youth a few days ago, he would have thought Aunt Letty was just talking without meaning anything in particular, the way grown-ups do, and it wouldn't have interested him. He almost thought so now, but suddenly it flashed upon his mind that he now knew, even if Aunt Letty didn't, that there really were other worlds and that he himself had been in one of them. At that rate, there might be a real land of youth somewhere. There might be almost anything. There might be fruit in some other world that would really cure his mother. And oh, well, you know how it feels if you begin hoping for something that you want desperately badly. You almost fight against the hope because it is too good to be true. You've been disappointed so often before. That was how Diggory felt. But it was no good trying to throttle this hope. It might really, it just might be true. So many odd things had happened already, and he had the magic rings. There must be worlds you could get through every pool in the wood. He could hunt through them all and then mother well again. Everything right again. He forgot all about watching for the witch. His hand was already going into the pocket where he kept the yellow ring, when all at once he heard a sound of galloping. "Hello, what's that?" thought Diggory. "Fire engine? I wonder what house is on fire. Great Scott, it's coming here. Why, it's her!" I needn't tell you who he meant by her. First came the hansom. There was no one in the driver's seat. On the roof, not sitting but standing on the roof, swaying with superb balance as it came at full speed round the corner with one wheel in the air, was Jadis, the Queen of Queens and the terror of Charn. Her teeth were bared, her eyes shone like fire, and her long hair streamed out behind her like a comet's tail. She was flogging the horse without mercy. Its nostrils were wide and red, and its sides were spotted with foam. It galloped madly up to the front door, missing the lamppost by an inch, and then reared up on its hind legs. The hansom crashed into the lamppost and shattered into several pieces. The witch, with a magnificent jump, had sprung clear just in time and landed on the horse's back. She settled herself astride and leaned forward, whispering things in its ears. They must have been things meant not to quiet it, but to madden it. It was on its hind legs again in a moment, and its neigh was like a scream. It was all hoofs and teeth and eyes and tossing mane. Only a splendid rider could have stayed on its back. Before Diggory had recovered his breath, a good many other things began to happen. A second hansom dashed up close behind the first. Out of it there jumped a fat man in a frock coat and a policeman. Then came a third hansom with 2 more policemen in it. After it came about 20 people, mostly errand boys, on bicycles, all ringing their bells and letting out cheers and catcalls. Last of all came a crowd of people on foot, all very hot with running, but obviously enjoying themselves. Windows shot up in all the houses of that street, and a housemaid or a butler appeared at every front door. They wanted to see the fun. Meanwhile, an old gentleman had begun to struggle shakily out of the ruins of the first hansom. Several people rushed forward to help him, but as one pulled him one way and another, perhaps he would have got out quite as quickly on his own. Diggory guessed that the old gentleman must be Uncle Andrew, but you couldn't see his face. His tall hat had been bashed down over it. Diggory rushed out and joined the crowd. "That's the woman! That's the woman!" cried the fat man, pointing at Jadis. "Do your duty, constable. Hundreds and thousands of pounds worth she's taken out of my shop. Look at that rope of pearls around her neck. That's mine, and she's given me a black eye too, what's more." "That she has, governor," said one of the crowd, "and as lovely a black eye as I'd wish to see. Beautiful bit of work that must have been." "Gor, ain't she strong then?" "You ought to put a nice raw beefsteak on it, mister. That's what it wants," said a butcher's boy. "Now then," said the most important of the policemen, "what's all this here?" "I tell you began the fat man, when someone else called out, "Don't let the old cove in the cab get away. He put her up to it." The old gentleman, who was certainly Uncle Andrew, had just succeeded in standing up and was rubbing his bruises. "Now then," said the policeman, turning to him, "what's all this?" "Wamful pomfy shumph," came Uncle Andrew's voice from inside the hat. "None of that now," said the policeman sternly. "You'll find this is no laughing matter. Take that hat off, you see." This was more easily said than done, but after Uncle Andrew had struggled in vain with the hat for some time, two other policemen seized it by the brim and forced it off. Thank you," said Uncle Andrew in a faint voice. "Thank you. Dear me, I'm terribly shaken. If someone could give me a small glass of brandy—" "Now you attend to me, if you please," said the policeman, taking out a very large notebook and a very small pencil. "Are you in charge of that there young woman?" "Look out!" called several voices, and the policeman jumped a step backward just in time. The horse had aimed a kick at him which would probably have killed him. Then the witch wheeled the horse round so that she faced the crowd, and its hind legs were on the footpath. She had a long, bright knife in her hand and had been busily cutting the horse free from the wreck of the hansom. All this time, Diggory had been trying to get into a position from which he could touch the witch. This wasn't at all easy, because on the side nearest to him there were too many people. And in order to get round to the other side, he had to pass between the horse's hoofs and the railings of the area that surrounded the house, for the Ketterleys' house had a basement. If you know anything about horses, and especially if you had seen what a state that horse was in at the moment, you will realize that this was a ticklish thing to do. Diggory knew lots about horses, but he set his teeth and got ready to make a dash for it as soon as he saw a favorable moment. A red-faced man in a bowler hat had now shouldered his way to the front of the crowd. "Hi, policeman," he said. "That's my 'orse, what she's sitting on, same as it's my cab, what she's made matchwood of." "One at a time, please, one at a time," said the policeman. "But there ain't no time," said the cabby. "I know that horse better'n you do. 'Tain't an ordinary horse. His father was a officer's charger in the cavalry, he was, and if the young woman goes on exciting him, they'll be murder done. Here, let me get at him." The policeman was only too glad to have a good reason for standing further away from the horse. The cabby took a step nearer, looked up at Jadis, and said in a not unkindly voice, "Now, missy, let me get at his head, and just you get off. lady, and you don't want all these roughs going for you, do you? You want to go home and have a nice cup of tea and to lay down quiet like, then you'll feel ever so much better." At the same time, he stretched out his hand toward the horse's head with the words, "Steady, Strawberry, old boy, steady now." Then, for the first time, the witch spoke. "Dog!" came her cold, clear voice, ringing loud above all the other noises. "Dog, unhand our royal charger. We are the Empress Jadis."